Welcome into the October 19th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. A bit of an update on the Jake Muzzin injury front and how the Leafs might approach this situation. Does Toronto need to make an addition to the blue line in the wake of this injury? We'll answer that one and some more hard-hitting questions as Dave and I are set to play some co-sign, no sign on today's show as well. All that and more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also now check us up on video format up on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Leafs, hit subscribe, hit the little notification bell as well so you can get new videos directly to you each morning, Monday through Friday. All the Leafs content you could possibly want each and every morning at your fingertips. Just make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On Leafs for all that info. David, what's going on, pal? It's an off day for the Maple Leafs. They did not skate at all on Tuesday. There was no practice. It was an off day after, they earned the off day, of course, after that hard hitting victory against the Arizona Coyotes. Oh, that's right. They lost. That's right. But still got the off day regardless. Scheduled off day. I'm just playing. But so there wasn't much to report in terms of what's going on new in Leafland. I'm sure tomorrow there potentially could end up being some new lines that'll come out. Or I guess by the time people are listening to this, it's already Wednesday. So practice later today, there'll probably be some lines that'll come out. And I'm anticipating to see some differences. Sheldon Keefe alluded to it after the game and said, yeah, we haven't spoken about it as a group, but he said he would anticipate making a couple of changes. Before we get into today's show, is there anything that you want to guess what moves are done to the lineup heading into the game against Dallas on Thursday?
Nick Robertson in.
For
I would say Malgin.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Kerfoot gets a bump up the lineup.
Ooh, so you think we get a full-on
I think there's going to be change
shuffle here?
Yeah, I think like you have to reward some players for doing well and other players for not doing well. I don't know where exactly they would put it. Would be maybe they would move Nylander down. Well, although I don't like splitting up that second line just because they've been so good. Maybe they put Kerfoot on that second line. They put Robertson on the third line. I just think they're gonna try something a little different because if he's saying they're contemplating changes, just having Robertson coming in wouldn't be sufficient enough, in my opinion. But we know that Sheldon Keefe might. A lot of the times, though, he is married to the lines he has for a good part, and he wants to give them a chance to establish the rhythm. But when the rhythm isn't going right, when it's out of sync, change it up, change the tune. That's what I think we should consider.
Yeah. I think another thing, Victor Mete is going to end up getting into the lineup just because Jake Muzzin's injury is going to be a little bit longer term. We'll give you an update on that in just a moment, but I think Mete gets into the lineup. He was called up the other day. I think he'll make his debut for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a Woodbridge native. So Woodbridge, from the Bridge. So a hometown Italian cat getting an opportunity to come out and play for the hometown Maple Leafs. So that'll be nice for him being able to do that at home, right, to make that in Scotiabank Arena, that debut. The other player I'm curious about, and I'm wondering, is if Wayne Simmons finds his way into the lineup. That's the guy I'm curious. Like, I think Nick Robertson is a no-doubter. I think he's in, Malgin's out. Victor Mete will go in for Muzzin, who's injured. But is Wayne Simmons going to get a look, an opportunity in this game? That's what I'm wondering. Like I think he's somebody who could go in and try and set the tone early, bit of a wake up call in a way against that team. The little bit more veteran, a little slower pace, which will be what Wayne Simmons is more likely, to give you at this point in his career. And they play a heavy game. Wayne Simmons can do that. I wonder if he's somebody because you look at last night the shift chart. The fourth line got one shift in the third period, one shift, which leads me to say that Keefe hasn't been as happy with that fourth line as maybe he thought he would, being a defensive specialist, being hemmed in their own zone the entire time, based on the fact that they're literally taking every single D zone faceoff draw. But potentially he sees an opportunity to get Simmons into a game and maybe one of Abe Kubel or Zach Aston Reese end up coming out of the lineup for a night just to make that happen. So I could see a couple of changes here. And obviously Samsonov, I think we can all say is probably going to start over Shalgren also in that game, unless there's a last minute, injury,
Let's
adductor
not
of
go
some.
there. Nope. Don't
You're
want
right.
that.
Let's not go there. But there was an injury that occurred in the game the other night. Jake Muzzin left with a neck injury, a neck strain. He did not return. They have not quite given it a designation yet, still just calling it a neck injury right now. But I was listening to Insider Trading earlier today, and it sounds as though the Leafs are going to be taking this with extreme caution, which I think they have to. The guy had, two concussions last year. This is another neck/head injury, an injury above the shoulders, we can at least call it, and I think that's fair. You got to be cautious. Mitch Marner had some comments post game yesterday, something to the effect of, he's my best friend out there, and he's got a wife and two kids, and at some point you got to think about the future. It's not all about hockey, and you do think about that for Jake Muzzin. Not saying that this is anything that's going to cost him his career, but it is something that I think he needs to take into consideration, that the Leafs are taking into consideration, and they're going to be very cautious with this injury. Like, that's three head/neck injuries in the span of a calendar year, right? So that's not good. And I don't expect for him to be in a Leafs uniform in quite some time.
Yeah, and I don't think the Leafs should be rushing him at all. Like,
No.
it just looked really bad, especially like when you saw the replay and you saw him down like that. We knew that there was going to be that potential for this to be, you know, that was going to be always Muzzin's thing. His play on the ice is, I mean, it wasn't great to start the year, but it's always the injury concern, and that's why some people thought it would have made sense for the Leafs to trade him. While that
Well,
was a
the
possibility.
no trade clause kind of hinders
Yeah.
that opportunity. But yes.
So yeah, like it sucks because the depth behind him isn't great, but Rasmus Sandin gets him a chance.
Well, that's the
turn him
thing.
over.
Like, who's there more pressure on to kind of fill that role, in your opinion? Is it Mark Giordano or Rasmus Sandin?
Defensively, it's going to be Giordano. Like, we know that. I think what they'll probably do is they might do Giordano, Mete, Sandin, Hall potentially, just because Sandin and Hall have played together.
Or Geo Hall and have that be your, like, D zone pairing, like your shutdown pair.
That could also work. Like, and I think they did play with each other during preseason, so that would also probably
And in
make.
the playoffs a little bit last year too.
Yeah, so I think any combination of those would work. Probably what you're saying with Gio just sliding him up, and then Sandin moves over to the left with Mete on the right.
Mhm.
That's like that, and then the Mete Sandin pairing will likely get sheltered a bit with a little more offensive zone draws, and this is where Riley and Brody will have to step up and play better defensively because I haven't been impressed with them in their own end.
No, and that's also a big problem, right? Like, these guys who you expect to be your stalwarts, your top pair. I know they're not necessarily your shutdown guys, and Morgan Riley's never been known for being, a high end defensive defenseman, but the guy's been on the ice for way too many goals so far this season. So That certainly has to change going forward for sure. The question that I have for you is like, if Muzzin's injury turns out to be long term, do you think that Kyle Dubas has to go out and make an addition? Like, if he's out, now you're looking at a top four of Riley Brody, Geo Hall, or Sandine Hall. Either way, Hall's in your top four, and guys who you expected to be depth third pair guys.
Yeah.
I mean, are the Leafs going to have to make a move? Like, at least if he does end up on LTIR and he's out for a while, there's going to be cap space for them to make a move. But are they willing to go there? Do you think?
Well, that's it, right? We thought it was going to happen last year to a degree with Muzzin being out, but they did make additions, but they weren't going out to get that like big fish just because Jake Muzzin's contract was coming back. And we thought maybe they would wait until the playoffs and all those things like that. That's the big question. Will Kyle Dubas finally say, you know what, we're going to LTIR, we're going to think about your long term health in terms of your quality of health. We're not going to think about having you back in the lineup. Like the risk is just too high. That's a conversation that Dubas and Muzzin are going to have, and with the medical team too. But it's purely speculation based on Muzzin's status is what's going to determine all of it. And if he is out, let's say this is something that's going to be serious. Yeah, the Leafs are going to have to make a trade. You're going to have that cap space open up if that's going to be the case. You have to, if you take Jake Muzzin out of the equation, that makes your defense. That doesn't scream contending defense
Yeah.
blue line to me.
Yeah, agreed. So we'll see. I did hear Darren Dreger, say that the Leafs are looking for a right-hand shot defenseman, probably of the top four quality. I don't, necessarily can't think of names off the top of my head that fit the mold that have been out there. We've talked about this in the past. I mean, how many times have we talked about trading for right shot defensemen, whether it's a Damon Severson or a Connor Murphy or, you get Scott Mayfield. Like there's a bunch of guys out there that we've discussed. Whether or not those trades actually come to fruition, who knows? It's something that we'll definitely be tracking here on Locked On Leafs. We'll get to some cosign, no signs in just a moment. But first, Dave, let me tell y'all about one of today's show sponsors, and that's betonline.net. It's your number one source for hockey betting this season. Find all your latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the NFL, MLB, MMA, boxing, and even golf. You can head to the betonline.net or use the mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We're hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. We're going to play a game here. If you're new to the show, appreciate you for giving us a chance. Hopefully you enjoyed and you hit subscribe and join us each and every weekday for new content. But we do this roughly once a week. Sometimes if it's a busy week, we won't be able to get to it. But with an off day in between, not much going on, this is the perfect time to get into one of our favorite bits. It's cosign, no sign, David. And for those who are new, the way it works, David and I are going to make a statement to each other. And if we agree with the statement, we're going to co-sign it. If we disagree with it, we're going to no sign it. So David, why don't you go first? Hit me with one of your co-sign, no signs.
I'm gonna hit punch right off in the beginning. Not even gonna hold back. Toronto Maple Leafs trade for a right-hand shot defenseman, and his name is Damon Severson.
Oh, so I stole your thunder a little bit when I said that a moment ago, eh? Sorry, pal.
You know
Sorry.
what? I was just like, let's continue the dialogue a little bit. Let's not, let's not beat around the bush.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't
Absolutely.
like. I will say this: I don't like naming specific players because that just means I'm trying to guarantee. Like it's tough. But you look at the list of defensemen that are potentially available, and I will explain actually my position a little bit more. Damon Severson's a pending UFA.
Mhm.
He does not figure into the New Jersey Devils' future
I don't
at
think
all, in
so
my
either.
opinion. And this is why I think he is the prime target for the Leafs.
So he's a $4.1 million cap hit. So it's something that if Muzzin were to end up on LTIR, something that they could fit into their structure. A big problem with making a trade, though, just before we really get ahead of ourselves. I mean, if you put Muzz on LTIR and he returns, now you're caught and you use that cap space by going out and getting a guy. Now you're
Yep.
kind of caught here, right? So it's difficult to say that they're going to trade for somebody with such a large cap hit because it would really put this team in a bind. So I'm going to no sign it for now until I know exactly what the situation is with Muzzin. If he ends up on LTIR and they kind of shut him down for the year just to be safe, so that there can't be any more contact and blunt hits to the head or anything like that, then I would be more comfortable with saying yes, I think a trade like that could happen. But until I know more information, which over the next couple of days, more information will come out. He did his tests, and over the next couple of days, we'll find out what the medical staff have learned from those tests. Then I'll be able to give you a better answer, I suppose. But for now, I guess I gotta no sign it. And I don't even know if Damien Severson would really be like the guy who I'd want either, to be honest with you. So like that guy in particular, also, there's a couple others that I feel like would be, closer to the top of my list on my want list, I suppose, for defensemen. So I'm gonna no sign Damien Severson.
I was gonna say, would you like to divulge a specific name? Don't have to give me a whole list, but is there one?
I've always been a big believer in Connor Murphy, thinking that he'd be a great fit for this team. Like he's a shot suppressor. He, is a really good defensive defenseman. He's physical. He can go out there. He can lay the body. 6'4", 215. He's a big boy. I've always liked him. And he's on a decent contract, 4.4, and there's 4 years left on it. So there's cost certainty. But again, it's not something that I think the Leafs can even entertain until they know exactly what's happening with Jake Muzzin and even Matt Murray to a certain extent as well. So until there's more clarity on the injury fronts and how long term these things actually are, I don't think they can make a big splash. Maybe they can go out and acquire, a Scott Mayfield, who I think is on the final year of his deal at like
He was
one.
another name I was considering as well. He's on the
Yeah,
top.
just over $1 million. I think maybe 1.2 or even 1.05, I think potentially. That would be something that you could make in the short term and wouldn't be too difficult to shed salary to make that also kind of work. And I think he's a pretty solid like 4. Like I think he's an upgrade on Justin Hall for sure.
Definitely.
So
Kind of hard not to see as anybody as an upgrade on Justin Hall in a way right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that may be like one of the players that you also look at as someone who you could add without knowing the long term injury situation, who's also cost effective and fits into the cap structure. All right, it's a good one though. It's a good conversation that I did want to have. So I'm glad that you had that one out there. Mine this is a tough one for me to say, David. It's a little tough for me to say. Cosign or no sign, Michael Bunting's rookie season was an aberration, and we'll see some regression here, and he will not reach the 50-point mark in what will be a bit of a sophomore slump.
Oof, you are just throwing yourself out there. I just want to quickly check something here. I'm going to no sign it. And the reason why I'm going to no sign it is I think he will equal what he did last year.
60 was he at 64 points, 63
Well, I
points?
think even if he doesn't equal it, he's not going to be far off. He doesn't look great right now, but he still has 2 points in 4 games.
Mhm.
Like it's not terrible considering the top line hasn't been great. I think there's if as long as Michael Bunting stays on that top line.
But
I think
does
that's
he stay on that top line? Like that's if he does, yes, he will get 50 points.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, it's not a guarantee.
The question here is who are they putting on that top line to take out Bunting? Is it Kerfoot? I don't think so.
Probably not. Nick Robertson.
I don't think they'll do that either. I don't know if they're going to put Nick Robertson right in that mix. I think
Do they
I think
load
if
up
they're
and they put Willie up there?
I think if they're really struggling, they'll do it. They'll give them a few more games. I don't think they want to go with the knee jerk reaction of making a switch. It doesn't pan out.
They
And
broke him up. They broke him up in the third period,
it did.
right, of this last game. Now they just completely took out the blender. But Kerfoot played hard and he played pretty well, and they actually
did.
got a lot going. Now the other two, Matthews and Marner, played way better in the third than they did in the second. So it's not really saying much because Michael Bunting can't do it himself. But
Nope.
they did play pretty well with Alex Kerfoot there in the third period. They definitely had some good looks, but yeah, I'm hoping it's a no sign as well because I'm a big Michael Bunting fan. However, it's funny that the conversation a week ago about Bunting was, do you sign him like 8 years? And now, David, if there was I guess co-sign, no sign, I'm going to go to number 2, kind of 1A or 1B, question 1B. If
Okay.
Michael Bunting's camp came to you right now and said, we'll sign 8 years, $3 million per, you sign that?
No.
You co-signing that?
No. I when I heard the 8 years was something that was being discussed, I'm like, why?
I
Why?
mean, Zach Hyman left, and it only left because they couldn't afford to pay him, right?
Yes.
Because he wouldn't bring his number down. But if that number, and Zach Hyman left for what, 5.75 is what he ended up taking in Edmonton on a 7-year deal.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so like if Michael Bunting, who had 60 points last year, is Austin Matthews' like best friend, which also you could factor into that whole situation about trying to bring Bunting back too. Doomsday clock. You know what I'm saying? 3 million AAV for a top line left winger who helps stir the drink with your big boys. You don't think that's worth giving him, an
I'm not
8-year term?
now, it's not the $3 million AAV, it's the 8 years.
Yeah,
'Cause
but but like at 26 years old, 8 years from now he'll be what, 34?
it's not the worst. It wouldn't be. No, I will say this, just so I can play devil's advocate to my point. We are seeing teams go hard on the term for deals. Like you look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning did. I just want to pull up their cap friendly
Yeah, but
percentage.
they sign like guys out of their like super young. Guys who are like 23, 22. Like they're signing these guys and getting.
Oh, there's one name here I'm going to bring up that doesn't fall. Nick Paul,
Well, that's Nick Paul was the guy he signed 7 years at, like,
7 years.
and that was the comparable, a
Yeah.
contract comparable that people were equating potentially signing Michael Bunting to.
But here's the thing, though. I need to see more from Michael Bunting this season to kind of give me that. Like, I'm going to do that deal right now. Closer to the end of the year, where you have a better idea. He said he's okay with negotiating during the season. Like, he's fine with that. So
Mm.
you take your time. I don't think Michael Bunting's thinking about leaving. I really don't. So I don't think the Leafs should
Well,
we're not hearing the chatter of him leaving is probably trying to push towards a deal being done. I don't think Michael Bunting. This is not like Zach Hyman where teams are going to be lining up to give Michael Bunting 8 years.
why wouldn't he? If Michael Bunting puts up another 60-point season, why wouldn't they be lining up
Well,
to
they probably will, but I just don't think Michael Bunting. He doesn't strike me as a player that will want to leave. Right?
neither did Zach Hyman. But then
Eh,
a team came through with a big money long-term deal, and he said, "I gotta do what's best for me and my family. I gotta go with the cash."
but we're talking about a $5 million deal that he probably wanted from the Leafs. I don't think Michael Bunting's asking for $5 million, and if he is, I wouldn't give Michael Bunting $5 million.
No, neither would I. That's why I asked you if you give him 3, though.
I would give him 3 for sure. If
That's what
it's
I'm
3,
saying, on an 8-year term. Would you give him $3 million a year on an 8-year term? That's the question.
if that's I'm worried about it because 8-year term, that's you're locking yourself in like big time. The reason why Nick Paul, in my opinion, isn't a good comparable is because he's a center. He plays center. Bunting doesn't play center, right? I don't. If it, again, I wouldn't hate it if that's what it takes to get the cap hit down, because you don't necessarily have the forward prospects really to say that you got a young guy, that Michael Bunting, other than Matthew Nyes. Who else is there really that you're trying to make room for on the depth chart?
Oh yeah, Nick Robertson, I guess would be the guy, but yeah, past that, it's pretty bleak when you look at
Yeah.
top end talent. I mean, someone could come through out of nowhere, like you get fourth, fifth round. I mean,
Like
Kaprizov.
Rodion Amirov, if he ever gets back to where they believe he can be.
Yep, Amirov is a player that definitely. By the way, really cool. I don't know if we mentioned. Did we mention that they
I
brought him
don't
out?
think
To
we
opening
mentioned
night?
the way that he was at the home opener. That was nice.
No. Yeah, that was nice, but
That's it.
yeah, there's not a whole lot of high end talent on the wings there.
Mhm.
Really, anywhere actually within the prospects. They've got some like good middle six guys and like some bottom four defensemen, but in terms of top end talent, I mean, for a team that doesn't pick in the first round a lot, and when they do, it's pretty late. Typically, you got to find diamonds in the rough, and haven't found it yet. They haven't found their, Kirill Kaprizov in the fifth round. It just hasn't happened. It really hasn't. Bunting, 950K out of free agency was pretty good, but we'll see if he can keep her going. Last year was great. So far this year, I've been a little less impressed with his game so far. A little sloppy. I think he's trying to do a little bit too much.
Mhm.
Hopefully it turns around. All right, your next one.
Next one for me, this is a league wide one. This might give you an eyebrow raise,
Do we have
but
the same one?
no. I don't think the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be in the draft lottery conversation. So I don't think they're going to finish in the bottom 5 like a lot of people have projected. So
Isn't the
mine
draft
I'll give
lottery the
you
bottom
this.
10? Isn't the draft lottery the bottom 10?
Yeah, so I'm going to clarify. I don't think the Philadelphia Flyers will finish in the bottom 5. So I think they're going to screw their chances a little bit by getting out of the top of the bottom 5.
So they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight.
The
We're recording
Lightning,
this, Tuesday night, and they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. Was it 3-2?
yeah,
They're
they
undefeated so far, 3-0 on the year, maybe 4-0 on 3 or 4-0 on the year. Like John Tortorella's got that group playing pretty well, playing some pretty good hockey. I wasn't expecting it. I don't expect it to continue though. Like at some point, I think this team's going to kind of fall out of it. But I could see them maybe being like sixth or seventh. So when you say out of the conversation,
like I don't think they're going to finish bottom 5. Like I'm looking at the bottom 5, they're going to be really bad.
yeah, I mean, like I think that they're probably better than Arizona. They're better than Chicago. They're better than Montreal. But then
San
there's
Jose,
like
they're 0
I
5
think
to start the season.
I think they are, but they were overseas and had to come back. That's probably really tough for them. They probably don't even have their proper sleep schedules on
Mhm.
check right now. Like Nashville's really struggled since coming back overseas as well. But ultimately, but like San Jose, Philadelphia, like I think those are kind of two teams in a similar boat where it's like it could go south on them, or they have enough talent where they can win some hockey games if things go right and they get the right bounces, or if Carter Hart decides to play up to the standard he did in his rookie season, then I think this team could potentially not fight for a playoff spot, but not be completely in the Bedard sweepstakes like we initially thought. But
Because I was hearing some people saying this team is going to be absolute trash, and
I've
you
been
never know.
saying that. I've been saying that they were this year's version of what the Blackhawks were last year, a team that went out, spent a lot of money, made some trades, made some signings, and misevaluated their team. And I thought that they were going to flame out and it was going to be a joke.
They're not a
So
great
far,
team,
so
I will
good.
say that. But
What's that?
they're not a great team, but they have team players that are going to play up to a
And they got
level.
a great coach, a coach that's going to bring the best out of that team, right? He's the one that does the most with the least, always has been. But I'm going to no sign it. I still think they'll be in the mix, like bottom 5. I don't know. I think they'll still be bottom 7, which to me, like 5, 7, you're still in the mix there. So I'm gonna no sign it. Like if they finish anywhere from 4 to 7, won't be surprised. I think that's where their range is. 4th to 7th worst in the league.
Okay.
So no sign it. All right, last one from me here, David. Also going around the NHL. Speaking of the Philadelphia Flyers, one of their victories this year was against the Vancouver Canucks. It was a comeback victory. The Vancouver Canucks so far through 4 games this year are 0-3-1. They have led in each of those games and surrendered multi-goal leads in each of those games. They're the first team in NHL history to ever do this, to hold multi-goal leads in 4 of the first 4 games of the NHL season and lose them all. Bruce Boudreau will not make it to Halloween as the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. Cosign or no sign?
I'm gonna co-sign. I know they're missing Tyler Myers right now. Like, apparently,
Dude,
that's
Tyler
soft.
Myers ain't nothing.
Yeah,
Tyler Myers is
I heard somebody say, "Well, they're missing Tyler Myers." I'm like, Canucks fans were happy that Tyler Myers wasn't playing.
yeah, like Tyler Myers is a 4. Like he's a 4th defenseman. If the 4 on your team is
The
like
reason why he
actually he
won.
is a top defenseman on that team. He is a top pair guy just because the blue line's not great, but like he's an ideal, like he's a 4 defenseman. Like that's what he is, just a 4. That shouldn't be the deciding factor of winning and losing these games.
Yeah, like I just think that they just have never really given Bruce Boudreau the stamp of approval or the confidence of like, yeah, he's our guy. We're gonna like they're not committing to this guy long term. So I think with the way that, and it's unfortunate because I do like Bruce Boudreau as a coach. I think he's had some bad luck over the past in his past last few teams. But yeah, no, I just don't think that. I think the whole Bruce, there it is. I think that was like a short term thing. Gave it a little bit of a boost at the end of last year when the Canucks tried to make that playoff push. But I just think that this team is flawed. But it's all on the coach. But that's usually the person that kind of gets the first. He's the first to go, especially with a management team that, as I said before, never picked him in the first place.
You're right. They didn't pick him, which I think is what could kind of go against him. And you just, it's just so bizarre because it's a team that when Bruce Boudreau came in, I think from there on out they played at like 115-point pace. Like they played at a playoff pace the rest of the way once he came in, potentially a division winning pace once he came into the fold. And to start off the year this way is just brutal. And after the loss that they had the other night against the Philadelphia Flyers, they legitimately had a players only meeting, and then the following night go out and lose to the winless Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
Again, giving up a 2-0 lead to start the game. They just can't finish for whatever reason. Not only did they lead 2-0, they also ended up regaining the lead. We're up 3-2, and then still ended up losing that game in overtime. So how you possibly let another multi-goal lead slip away after a players-only meeting 3 games into the season? Yeah, I think at some point there is going to be some difficult conversations to be had with Brucey Boudreau. I mean, I hope not. I think he's one of the funniest coaches out there. He's always good for a quote, a clip. He's hilarious. We know that he's a massive Leafs fan, But ultimately, I mean, that's a market that expects a lot more of their team, and to lose games in the fashion that they're losing. I don't know how much longer that fan base and that organization, knowing that it's also not going to cost them much money. He's a lame duck coach, essentially. He's coaching in a contract year, and it's not going well. I could easily see some sort of switch happening here with ease. So I'd also co-sign it that he's gone by Halloween.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I love Brucey, but I think that's the case. Do you have one more? Or did we finish him up?
Yeah, I have one more.
Yeah.
The Leafs will make a trade before the end of November.
So by that, like American Thanksgiving date, that's like the hockey date where
Yeah.
you can finally evaluate things. Not game 3 or 4 of the season, which we tend to do here on this show.
Yeah. I'm pushing that deadline a little bit longer.
A little bit longer. Okay, so that they'll make a trade of any kind?
Yep.
Yeah, I think they'll make a trade. I mean, it doesn't have to be for like like a star player or like a top 4 guy or a goal, just any trade, even like a depth piece, like a sixth defenseman.
Well, I think a trade's gonna happen because when Matt Murray comes back, depending on what happens with Jake Muzzin, what are you doing with Timothy
Oh,
Williams?
yeah, I mean, you may even need to make a trade between now and then just to get cap compliant. You're right. So it's not even like adding to the team. You might have to subtract from the team. I was even thinking of that. I was thinking of them acquiring somebody. But
We've
yeah,
the right now the Leafs are just like, yeah, cap space. This feels good. We can actually like call players up and have a
yeah.
full roster. I think there's I don't see a player right like whether it's Engvall, Hull, like I don't see how the team doesn't think, you know what? Maybe we need a little bit of breathing room right now to have
Mhm.
more options for the lineup rather than having a locked in lineup of the minimum skaters when Matt Murray comes back.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going to co-sign it though for a couple of reasons. I think they could add in the short term somebody, but also, they kind of need to also make a deal by Thanksgiving probably, unless miraculously this team is healthy all year long. Which, I mean, they couldn't even stay healthy past game 1 for 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 these guys. So right from get go, there's been some health issues. So yeah, I think that there probably will be a trade no matter what. Um, so, yeah, I'll co-sign that one for sure.
And also we need content.
Yeah, yeah. Kyle, just for Locked On Leafs, specifically because we need content, make a trade.
Also,
Make a
Kyle,
trade.
our phones are open if you ever want to discuss stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Locked On Sens guys. Pierre Dorian came on their show. Why can't we get Kyle?
We're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on that.
We should send a note to their PR and be like, hey,
Uh, Talk about working on things. You never told me the most ridiculous thing that the Leafs have done. I'm gonna pull it up. Somebody actually sent this to me and was saying, Dave, what the hell's going on? What are the Leafs doing?
what are you talking about?
What is this sign?
Oh, yeah. Their new kind of signage there, forever don't stop. Because, like hashtag Leafs forever.
That seriously cannot be it.
So I think like forever don't stop because they're going with like the least forever mantra again. So it's like forever don't stop.
How did we go from a team that had a pretty great slogan when I was growing up, from the passion that unites us all, to forever don't stop?
That's a great point. It honestly is a great point. And the passion is like it's come back as like a meme with our generation, I feel like the passion. And why don't they go back to that? Like realistically, this forever, at least forever, forever don't stop. Like it just really doesn't make any sense. Like
It sounds like a failed like pop single. Forever don't stop.
legitimately, yeah, that's exactly what that sounds like. Like just a flop, didn't even hit the hot 100, just an absolute flop. And that's what
Like,
the Leafs have been so far early on in the season. So it's because of the slogan.
I just think that I was like, my brain hurt trying to figure out what exactly we're trying to get with that.
I didn't know what you were talking about at first. I was like, what did I
Well, I
not
brought this
do?
up. Yeah, you had no idea I was bringing this up. I
No,
wanted to catch you off guard, and I'm glad I did because it's ridiculous.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Forever don't stop. I did see that like on opening day, the exact tweet you just saw pulled up by David Alter, and I was like, the hell is this? This is dumb. Like, okay, forever don't stop. Anyways, the Maple Leafs. Dumb off the ice, dumb on the ice. Why are we fans? Because we got
Passion that unites us
the
all.
passion that unites us all, buddy. The passion. All right, let's put a bow on this bad boy. That's gonna do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. Leafs taking on the Dallas Stars. Part of the it'll be the final game of that homestand here. Gotta get off to a much better. They gotta win that game. Gotta win that game, or they will be run out of town as they go off on their California road trip. So we will be back tomorrow to help tee up that game. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.